my C++ object-oriented series. This is our second episode. In the previous episode, we are explaining some key concepts of object orientation, which are classes. I explained what are classes. We defined classes, we defined objects, and we explained the whole concept of encapsulation with its definition. So in this series, we'll progress to our second concept of object orientation, which we refer to as inheritance. Before we start with inheritance, we must first define what is inheritance. Inheritance, it is a process of creating classes that are derived from a certain class. What do I mean by that? When you do inheritance, you will be having your base class, and then we'll have classes that come from that base class. Let's say if you were to make an example with animals, you will say a class animal is a base class for dogs, for cats, for lions, for zebras. Because a dog is an animal, a cat is an animal, a lion is an animal. So how do you depict inheritance when you're given a scenario? In most cases, inheritance will be depicted by the keyword is a. When something is a something, that there's a high chance that there will be inheritance involved in that scenario. Not all the time, but most of the time there will be inheritance involved in that scenario. So in our example, as we did last week, when we'll be continuing from what we did last week when we're doing encapsulation, we made an example with a shape rectangle whereby we encapsulated the data of height and the data of width. Now we are going to upgrade that project to introduce inheritance to it, but won't be using last week's project. We'll start a new project from scratch of inheritance. So let's create a new project. We'll call it OOP, which will be inheritance. Yeah, so as we can see, we have the basic C++ program, which is a hello world. So from this basic C++ program, hello world, we are going to create a class. So in our structure, we'll be having a class called shape. Then from the class called shape, we'll be deriving different kinds of shapes. Since we have rectangle is a shape, triangle is a shape, circle is a shape. Let's make example with those three shapes. So we'll create a class called shapes, and then we'll have triangle inherit from shape, we'll have rectangle inherit from shape, and we'll also have a circle inherit from shape. So what happens in inheritance, if a class inherits from a base class, they will inherit everything which is inside that base class. Then in our shape header, we'll create a class which we'll call it shape. Then inside our class, we'll have in the public scope, we'll be having a function, let's say perimeter, or let's say area. Since all shapes have area, then we can, okay, in the previous episode, I told you that you have three scopes in visibility scopes in object orientation, which is public, protected, and private. And in the previous episode, we've covered public and private. So in this episode, I'll be explaining protected. What is a protected state? Protected state, all the data that will be put under protected state is the data that will be only accessed by the children of that class and will not be accessible by other outsiders. right? So if we were to make an example and say protected here, and let's say create a function, let's just say here cout, and then we'll say calculating area. Then we'll have to include our IO string. Then we can call this shape with this method, let's say print, like that. Then we'll say the implementation of it will be with just a simple function that will be responsible to print that I am a shape. Right. So if we were to create a class that will inherit from shapes, let's say if you create a rectangle will automatically have access to this function here, and will also have access to this function here. So let's create our rectangle and see what I'm talking about. Let's create a class. Then inside this class, we'll say public. Then we'll have a void that will say print parameter, and it will be a simple function that will just say std cout perimeter of a rectangle. So you'll notice in rectangle we only have perimeter. So if we were to come to our main and we'll include, let's say hashtag include shape, and hashtag include rectangle. Right. So if we were to come here, if we say shape, then we say shape1 equals to shape, like that. Then you'll notice that here I'm using the default constructor, even though that I didn't declare it the side or implement it. But C++, when you create an object or a class, it automatically comes with a constructor, which is a default constructor. Just there, it does nothing. So if I was to say now shape1 dot, it will say area. I can print my area. Then I can say shape1 dot print fun. There we go, calculating area, meaning it works fine. But if we were to say print shape, it should give us an error because this function is not accessible outside the class, but it is accessible to the children of the class. It's saying the print fun is protected within the context, meaning you cannot call this function outside this class unless you are calling it inside the child of that class. So let's say if we wanted to have this function area inside our rectangle, one will say you will just copy this function and paste it under rectangle. But imagine now, let's say you have 100 different types of shapes. Do you have to copy that function to all those different shapes? The answer is no, right? So there must be a certain way to do such a thing. Because now if you can come here and create a rectangle, we'll call it drag1. Okay, it's fine too. Then we'll say it's equals to rectangle, like that. If we're to say reg 2 dot, we only have print parameter, like that. If we're to compile and run, we should see calculating area and calculating perimeter. Oh, let's comment this one. We should see calculating perimeter when we run this code. There we go, perimeter of a triangle, right? But let's say now we want to print area of this triangle, of this rectangle, sorry. What do you do? You don't copy this area, this side. You use the concept of object orientation, which is called inheritance, whereby this class here, which is a child of shape, it will inherit everything which is inside shape. And then how to do it? You'll just include shape up here. Then you'll come here and you'll put semicolon, say public, then you say shape. As easy as that. So if you were to come to main again, this rectangle now has area. You see, you can print area from rectangle. Oh, this is a function, not a variable. Right, calculating area. So let's say we wanted to access this function here, which is protected. We saw when you access it directly from main, you can access it. So if you want to use it on your child classes, all you can do, you'll create, let's say, a function which is public here. Then we'll call it, let's say, prod function, right? Then inside here, you can invoke that function, which was, what was its name? It was print fun. Like that. Then now you can come to main and you can say dot proc function. It should type whatever it's inside this print function because we invoked it inside this proc function. Oh, made a mistake. I didn't build that. So let's build and run. I am a shape. There we go. That's how you access protected information outside the class that they were protected in, right? That's the basic concept of inheritance. Inheritance can be important whereby you have many shapes and you want them to have similar behavior, right? So you can put the behavior which is similar inside here, then they will all inherit from that class. That's all for today. If you like this video, please like and comment down below any question that you might have. If you want the next episode, you can click here. And then if you want to subscribe to this channel, you can click right here. Thank you. Enjoy your day.